Hey, this is Anney.
And Samantha.
And welcome to Stuff Mom Never Told You, production of iHeartRadio. And welcome to our hinted at Last of Us Season 2 wrap-up. Once again, not a sponsor. If I had control, things would be different, but whatever. And you will get spoiled on the most recent season of The Last of Us, the first season, the first game, parts of the second game, vague hints at what's to come. So I'll just put that out there. I have a whole section here where I'm going to complain about how hard this is to talk about without spoiling things. Yeah. But this is a very indulgent thing because it is one of my very favorite. It's my very favorite game of all time. And I love the show. I rewatched. I did the whole rewatch last night.
Oh, including the first season?
No, I didn't. I haven't had time to do that because
I was like, wow.
If you've listened to the show, you know me and Samantha have gone through we've had some things come up.
We've had some things come up. So I haven't had time to do that yet. But I did do, in preparation for this, the whole second season for the first time. And it was cool. Like, because it's really fun. I've said before, I love the anticipation, the guessing of what's coming next time, the next episode. But it was cool knowing what was coming and just being able to like have it continuously go. And it moves quickly. Like the first season moves quickly, but the second one, not just because it's shorter in episodes, but I think because they're covering so much ground so quickly that I was like, oh, it's over already. Whoa, they did that much. Wow. Anyway, I had a great time. I can't wait to do the whole thing. Right. Which we were trying to plan to do one day when the stars align.
When the stars align, because that would be 16 hours?
Mm-hmm.
16 hours. Oof. I could do it.
I know you could. The question is, would you take a break when everybody's time to take a break?
That's what I'm like. Would you take a pause between? Where would it be? Would it be between season 1 and season 2? But I feel like it would be really good to just roll into the first episode of season 2 because that's where it starts.
Yeah, I have a feeling I'll have to put some ground rules down.
Well, that's a problem for future us. That's a problem for future us. So today it is very indulgent. Just a couple of, as I said, I had to cut, surprisingly, because those episodes are pretty long. I had to cut some things out. But also a couple of you have requested this. Thank you. And we'll be touching on that a little bit more at the end. But yeah, also it's twofold. It's both Samantha and I have been going through kind of a lot of things. And so this is an easier episode for us. But
especially
also
for me.
Yay. But also it's hard for me to express how big this feels for me. Like that this season came out and I got to see it. I don't know. Like now that it's over, I'm having these kind of reflective moments of like, oh gosh, that was so important to me, and that I gotta wait who knows how long for the next season. So it is kind of a big deal to me, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes, it is a very big deal. Which is why I said we should do a wrap up, because there's things you want to say and we can talk about comparisons and such. So, I don't think anybody hates that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have to say, some of you did write in and were like, I've never seen the show, but I still love these episodes. Or you convinced me to watch it, or you convinced me to play it, which I'm like, hey, again, why have we not sponsored?
Because they have their own podcast, Anney.
But I know. But I am very glad to hear that. That makes me feel better, because sometimes I'm just like screaming into a void of people who are like, will you talk about something else now? But anyway, okay. I recommend that you listen to our previous episodes, our previous recaps
on this season that just ended. But you know, you do you. You don't have to.
You.
But I feel like one thing that I didn't touch on, it's kind of interesting coming from someone who's played the game as many times as I have versus someone who has no knowledge, is just watching it on TV for the first time, is that I didn't really even talk about the cliffhanger, which it obviously is one. It's a huge cliffhanger.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I said in the first episode, I had read reviews. I was very nervous about this coming out because I knew it was going to be controversial. We'll talk about that in a second. But like, I also knew there was no good place for them to split it. There just really isn't. And we had our theories. Samantha knows I would just randomly text you and your partner and be like, I think this is where they're going to split it. But we were pretty sure they were going to split it there. And I knew based on reviews that it was a very jarring and sudden thing for a lot of people. And so I was anticipating like being let down, not because it was bad, but just because of the way people were like, I loved it until this point. Or even like, I still love it, but I didn't like this aspect of it. And so I feel like I was really relieved, actually. But I think that's because I'm coming from a place of the gamer who knows what's to come.
Mm-hmm.
So I get that people are frustrated by it. It is very sudden. It's very jarring. And it's kind of a big ask to be like, yeah, now the person we've been telling you hate this whole time, you're going to get her point of view. And I have to tell you, the first time I played it, I was mad as hell. I was so mad because they did it so well. And so it took me a while to come around. And then when I did, I was like, oh, okay, I get it. Okay. But I honestly, as someone who's played the game, I was just like, yes, this is how it is in the game. And I'm relieved that it's not worse than how people were making it sound. But but because I have the stuff, I already know what's going to happen. I get it. I get that if you don't, and I really do recommend you don't spoil yourself if you can avoid it, that people are frustrated and they're like, what, is just over? And you don't know what happens. You don't know what happens to Ellie, Tommy, or Dina.
Mm-hmm.
So I wish I had talked about that a little bit more in our final episode, but because to me, I just know, it kind of escapes my,
right.
I'm like, oh yeah. But it was, and when you play the game, it's like that too. And I didn't know what was going to happen, and it takes forever. Listen, the game is a long game, and it takes a long time before you get to the resolution of what happened when Ellie and Abby finally have this confrontation. So I get it. Trust me, I am with you. But I know I've talked about this before, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about the kind of heart of a lot of the themes of this game is revenge and justice. How do you frame that? And I think at the end of this season, there are questions of, was this worth it, given what Ellie has lost and stands to lose, but also on Abby's side, given what Abby has lost. And I am really interested in how they're going to deal with that, because as I mentioned in our last episode about the finale, Ellie's characterization is different a little in the show versus the game. A lot of them are nicer, to be honest with you, than they are in the game. And Ellie definitely is. She at least shows more open remorse than she does in the game.
So it feels a little different. It feels like she's already had a realization that, okay, this was not worth it. She doesn't have that in the game at all. But the early marketing of the show was every path has a price. And it was a picture of Ellie, picture of Abby, and a picture of Joel. And Joel was the one that was looking over his shoulder because he knew like what he had done and things might come for him. People like Abby might come for him. But now we have this dynamic of Ellie and Abby having created similar things. Also, I love this, but everyone knows I love The Last of Us too. So everyone wants my opinion about it, about like everything. And I have a friend who is watching it, I think, solely for my benefit. I think she likes it, but she's like, I know you'll never forgive me if I don't watch it. I'm like, not really, but but anyway, I hung out with her recently, and she was like, we've talked about it before, so I know some of her thoughts about the first season, for instance. But she had a very specific beef about Abby that I thought was kind of funny, where she was angry that people weren't angrier at her. Like the creators, not like outside people. And she was saying, in the post interviews, they never bring up what Abby did. And I'm like, they will. They're going to bring up what Abby did. In her season, when you learn why her friend group is apparently so fractured when we see them. Like, it was just kind of funny because then I was explaining to her how I felt doing these episodes where it's difficult to talk about her without spoiling things, know? Mm-hmm. Even if you're unintentionally just bringing something up. But it was quite funny to me that her complaint was that they weren't mad enough at her. And that complaint actually has some traction. I've seen from people online being angry that I honestly think a lot of this is just to bait people. But the creators will often say things that contradict each other. And one of them, who knows? Because like I said, 80% of bots have infiltrated this conversation. But one of the things was that they were saying that, Abby might be the hero of the story, and people were freaking out.
Interesting.
Yeah. But it was just kind of funny to me that was her biggest complaint of the whole thing, was the post interviews weren't angry enough.
So your friend has never seen you go through a playthrough?
No.
Oh.
No. I asked her to once, and she said, if you give me enough alcohol. But she also said that she gets motion sickness. Watching people play games. I feel like I'm really good at that, at not doing the thing that makes people motion sick, but I'm not going to make her do it. If she don't want to, she doesn't want to.
All right.
So she's heard me talk about it though, because she's told me she doesn't care about spoilers. So she already knew when it first came out. I told her the whole thing.
Right.
Another thing that I forgot to mention, I did say people are really, interestingly to me, angry that Abby is not buff like she is in the game. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more at the end. And I kind of just moved on and said, basically the creators said there's no need for us to have her be that buff because it's sort of a plot point that they're clearly not going to use. But also, it was a gameplay thing. It was a gameplay style. So you do play Abby within the first hour of the game, which is crazy. But then when you switch to her POV for a long time,
she's very different than Ellie. So it's a way her body type is. So it's a way of differentiating the biting styles that they have. So Abby is much less stealthy, but much stronger. And that's just like a way to differentiate your gameplay style. It's kind of an interesting thing where like halfway in the game, you have to sort of relearn your strategies. So I think that's one of the things that's I kind of love about this game, but I think that's one of the reasons that they were like, well, we don't have to do that because it's not a game. But it is kind of wild that like this is one of the things why I kept saying it's going to be difficult for them to adapt some of these things, because you go from playing this character, having this goal, Ellie, hunting Abby, and then you switch. And now you know Ellie is hunting Abby. And you get these signs that she is around, but Abby doesn't know it. Of course she doesn't know it, but you do. So it's a very clever like way to get you feel on edge even though you're playing the person that you had just wanted to kill as Ellie. It's very, very interesting to play like the two characters who are in direct opposition to each other and knowing that they're both trying to kill each other. Because you're Abby, like then you're trying to find where Ellie is at the theater. Like, oh, I love it. I love it. So one of the things that also we didn't get to talk about too much, but I think it's going to be interesting in the next season is this idea of the causes that you believe in or don't believe in. And in leadership. So we had that conversation with Isaac where he was saying, I thought Abby was going to be the one to take this over. She's the one that needs to take this over. And she's not there. She's disappeared. And I think that the idea, too, of people and groups not being monoliths is going to be explored because, you know, Abby and her crew just went to the WLF because they didn't really have anywhere else to go and they needed the resources, or at least Abby believed they needed the resources that the WLF had to train and hunt down Joel, to find Joel. And so I think that's interesting as a contrast with Ellie as well, or not, maybe a similarity, is that Ellie, when she has her speech where she's trying to convince the Jackson Hole crew to go find Abby and execute her, I don't think she really believes that. I think she was hoping they would say yes, but really she was like, I don't care. I don't believe in this whole thing. So we'll see where that goes. That also brings us to Dina and Ellie's love, or their romance. I am not at all surprised that people are calling it woke. I just have zero surprise in my heart for that. But I will tell you, the first time I played it, there are some instances wherein online internet bros call something woke. And I don't agree, but I get what they're saying. Because it feels forced, or it feels poorly written, or it feels like a company that's just trying to signal something. I don't agree, but I kind of am like, okay, I see where this is coming from. I never felt that with The Last of Us. To me, it felt very natural. I thought it was sweet. I wanted it to happen. It didn't even take me out of the story at all. But the thing is, I also have a liberal bubble, and I'm trying to be more aware of my like bubbles. But so to me, it just doesn't. I have a lot of gay friends, so it doesn't seem like, oh, that's weird. Instead, it's like, oh, that's nice. It's like a well-told, fleshed out, complex love story. And I have been thinking about this for a while, but a lot of the angry rhetoric I'm seeing online, it's like they're trying to use arguments that sound almost rational. Like they're trying to be like some conservative women politicians do, where they're like, that's not feminist, but really it's what they're talking about, it's anti-feminist. So Dina and Ellie's relationship was an interesting example because I read so many articles that were like, they were just basically dismissing it and saying that it doesn't add anything or doesn't have depth or all this stuff. They were trying to make it sound like it's just in here to be in here. And I don't feel like it is. But the arguments they were using were very like, this is actually anti-LGBTQ. You know what I mean?
Oh, weird.
Yeah. And I just never felt that. And that's not to say like no piece of media is perfect, but I just don't, that wasn't the vibe that I got. And I think that they're trying to make it sound like they're being the reasonable ones and actually the ones that are more knowledgeable about this. But I just don't think it's coming from a good place, because a lot of stuff has said they really love Dina, and they think her characterization is better in the show than it is in the game. And they're somehow using that to say that this relationship isn't a good relationship. I'm kind of confused by the whole thing, to be honest. But I also had this thought when I was watching it last night, because I've seen a lot of people say, I just don't want to see this. I just don't want to see it. And I think a lot of them were referring to the very non-explicit sex scene. But it just kind of made me laugh because it runs against the long-standing trope of men wanting to see two women together. And now that they see it when it's like a real relationship, they don't actually
from their
want
gaze, which is why Dina's more acceptable, because it's still like what a male will think of a lesbian.
Right.
What they want to think of as lesbian, who is still feminine and cutesy and all that. And then, not that Bella Ramsey's not, but not to their standard, because she's more masculine.
Yes. It's just very interesting to me when I'm like, oh, this is where, if it's actually a real thing,
right,
you don't like it at all.
You don't actually like it.
No. Another thing I picked up on is this isn't such a big thing in the game. It's talked about, but they really hammer home the loss of knowledge in this. The loss of knowledge in this world, the loss of experts. And in the game, you do have moments as the player where you're like, oh, they don't know what this is. And it's sort of played almost like darkly funny. Like, oh, they don't know what that is. Oh, no. But in the show, it's very like, oh, this person has died. Maybe no one else left knows how to do that, which I think is I'm glad they put that in there. I think that's a pretty devastating way that many of us might not think about when we think about the end of the world, to remind you that, I mean, what are they going to do? Is this just like the slow, will there be any recovery from this, or are we just eventually all going to die out? And I had that moment when I was watching the scene between Ellie and Mel, who Mel was training under Abby's dad. And Abby's dad was like he was believed to be one of the last known, if not the last known person that could have made a vaccine. So she was like his protege. And she kind of immediately is just like asking Ellie to try to save her baby, whether it's desperation, whether it's she just is like, we're on this up together, so you're gonna help me right now, because she knows once she's gone, there's no one else. There's no one else there, and no one else with her skill set, perhaps. And it's a real downer, is what it is. It's effective. I think it's effective of reminding you of the things that are lost, that are maybe not the first big things you think of, but that loss of knowledge. Okay, so this kind of transitions us into some of the backlash. But first, I want to reiterate, be careful what you take as truth. There's a reason I said in the very first episode of our miniseries that I think The Last of Us 2 Reddit is one of the most toxic places on the internet. There's a concerted effort to make you think that these things are true, and or just confuse you. But when the game came out, it was very, very controversial. It was, I don't think I can even explain to you. You can go online and on YouTube, you can watch the documentary Grounded, which is about how it got made for free. And it has a whole bit in there about how bad it was. But it was bad. It was one of those things where if you mentioned you liked it in conversation, you were running kind of a risk, especially around dudes. But it is one of the most awarded and critically acclaimed games of all time. It is one of the best-selling games of all time. So I think that is a reminder that, these things you hear online sometimes get really amplified. But they have to, the truth, if we're talking about sales, and by the way, some people are like, that's just all pre-orders. And then when I found out, I didn't like it. But no, because the sales saw a boost and they continuously sell. And then when like the remaster remake came out, whatever it was, we were all mad about it. We all bought it anyway. So like people still like it. And the show is the same. The sales actually went up after the show came out, which I'm interested in because I guess it's people wanting to find out what happens next. That brings us to our listener mail we received, especially one from Margaret. We got one from Margaret and Kelsey about kind of these things. And Margaret was like, I've never played a video game before, but you've convinced me to do it. And wish me luck. And I'm wishing you luck, Margaret, because this is actually, I don't think the game is hard. I think it's pretty good. But I was talking to good in terms of like ease of controls. But I was talking about, I was talking to a friend about this the other day, and she was like, sometimes I feel like gamers just overestimate how much knowledge you just have, and us non-gamers do. So like X normally does this, or Square normally does this, like across a bunch of games. And she was talking about how she felt embarrassed to even try because her partner is trying to get her to play games outside of like Mario Kart. And she was just saying like, it just makes me tense and I can't, I feel like he's taking for granted that I don't know what he's talking about. So I think that's a very fair point. I hope that it is a good experience for you. But if not, if you just decide it's not for you, there are plenty of videos online you can watch of gameplay. As I've said, maybe one day mine will be up there. But I'm very interested to hear how your journey goes, and I hope it goes well. But it is, it's one of those games where like a lot of people start on something maybe not as, not as complicated as The Last of Us 2, but I really hope it goes well. And there are a bunch of settings, by the way, you can turn on or turn off that'll be like press square or whatever. So just know, and difficulty modes, like if I'm trying to beat it fast, I play it on light and I have no regrets or embarrassment about it. Then, okay, so it is hard to talk about some of this stuff, and some of it, I'm sure those of you who are more aware are like, why haven't you talked about some of these aspects yet? It's because it's really hard to talk about this whole thing without spoiling it. It's meant to be played as a whole story, and then, in my opinion, literally played again. But here we go. So yes, the game had this huge backlash. It was massive. I don't think I really have to explain what it was, but essentially it was dudes being like, hey, you took our main man, Joel, tried to make him into, I guess in their minds, some kind of villain, which I don't think that's true, but in their minds, like, make him look bad. Then make us play as Ellie, who now doesn't seem to even like Joel. Oh my God. And then you have the gall to make us play as Abby. And there's a lot of anti-trans stuff that we'll get towards when we get to her season that happened around that, because she was so buff. And they were just furious. They were furious. There were death threats. It was like, I mean, I wouldn't, like I said, it was one of those things where I had to trust you if I would even bring up that I loved it. It was bad news. So when the show came out, I already knew there was going to be backlash. So to me, I was like, yep. I remember what happened when the game came out. This is no surprise. I am disappointed. I am not at all surprised. I think that a lot of things are fueling this narrative that everyone hated it or everybody's angry about it or whatever. I don't think it's true. Personally, that's not been my experience. But I do think there's a lot of like bots and just really angry people who are fueling it. And it's fascinating to me because of a lot of the things I've been seeing are gamers who are mad that it's not like the game, but they hated the game. And so I'm like, the f*** is this? You hated that in the game and now they changed it and now you're mad about it. I think they want to be proven correct. I think they're like, a lot of them are really angry because they think that Ellie was characterized much, as I said, much nicer. Like everybody's kind of a gentler characterization of themselves in the show than they are in the game, at least on the front. And I think they were mad because they were like, no, I want you to do what they did in the game so I could be like, see how terrible she is. And I have been really disappointed in a lot of women who are mad, both that Pedro Pascal got killed off, which I get, but at Ellie, because they say she's an ungrateful bitch or something like that, which I get. You're supposed to, all the characters in The Last of Us are complicated. Like there are times when I was angry at Ellie too. But I don't think we're giving like a fair shake to what happens and why she was angry and how young she is and all of that stuff. And I get it because Joel's and Pedro Pascal is so nice, and when scenes we see with them together are very sweet. But I think we have to take in the reality of it. And some people have complained that I'm too forgiving to Ellie and Abby and not enough to Joel. And I don't think that's true at all. I think I'm just more vocal about Abby and Ellie because Joel doesn't need it. Uh, Joel does not need my protection because people generally are on his side. And I get why. And I like him as a character. But I also just think we have to take in the realities of who he is if we're going to take in the realities of everybody else and the reality of what he did. And you can come out on either side of that, however you feel about it. But I feel like we're not giving a lot of the women characters the same space. And that, if you don't mind potentially being spoiled, is something that we talked about in our Women in Survival Horror Games episode, and how I felt like women in revenge, we don't give them the same space that we do men in revenge. And that's part of the complication as well, is that Joel's story is sort of I don't know. I guess some people would call it like a rescue story. Like he's protecting this young girl. And then almost kind of a redemption story. But I think we talked about that. Who gets redemption as well in our Women in Forgiveness episode. Who do we allow these redemption arcs? And who do we not? So all that to say, I was not surprised. And I, to be honest with you, didn't engage in it at all. I haven't been on social media in a long time. And this is one of the reasons a lot of the fandoms I love are very toxic. And I just it wasn't a good use of my energy. So I knew it was going to happen. I knew it was happening, but I kind of distanced myself from it. Like I didn't want that to kind of taint my experience, but I know it was huge. I've gotten Google alerts about it because they all know I love The Last of Us. So I get updates about it. And, even the creators said, we know people are going to be mad. And they've had to release several statements lately about it. But they also were like, this is the story and we don't want to compromise on it. And I'm glad they didn't, because I love the story. But it does suck because it is something that people put a lot of hard work into. And in this case, we're getting two main casting backlashes, which is Bella Ramsey and Caitlin Dever, Ellie and Abby. I honestly, I think they both did a wonderful job. There's no part of me that's like, this is miscast. But I did read some interesting articles about Bella Ramsey being, quote, miscast, and how it actually creates an interesting opportunity. From what I can gather, most of these arguments are physical. They're all about appearance. And again, I just feel like if you're pretty close to the character, then I don't care if you're doing a good acting job and the character's being created and being cared for. I don't really care. But honestly, most of it, and people, you can write in and correct me if I'm wrong, because a lot of this, like I said, is very hateful. And I've been avoiding it, like purposefully avoiding it, because I've heard it. I heard it when the game came out, and I just like I don't want to deal with it. But from what I can tell, it's mostly about physicality. And like I said, people are they're annoyed that I think they feel like the characterizations of Abby and Ellie are, quote, nicer, which I think that there's a lot of reasons why that might be, but one of them is just the way the media of a show works versus the media of a game. But also they knew there was going to be this huge backlash. So they were trying to preempt it in some ways. And as I said, they on their next game, Naughty Dog's next game, which is the studio behind The Last of Us, They even have a boot camp for dealing with this kind of which is so unfortunate. I'm glad that they're like taking steps, but I hate that that's a thing at all. And then one of the things the listener Margaret brought up too is that they're trying to be like, so many people stopped watching after Joel died, which is possible. There's been like a lot of mixed news reports about that. And actually, surprisingly, streaming services are real cagey about how many people are watching their shows. And I think 2 years ago, there was a whole like push to get Netflix in particular to release their data.
Didn't they do a whole like lawsuit trying to hide their data? Or at least because they were doing something really...
Yeah.
They're like, that's not right. And they were counting like barely seconds type of things.
Yes. Yeah. So, and you know, to be honest, we can speak to that as podcasters.
I'm sad about that.
Yeah. Well, because that they constantly are changing how they calculate what counts as a listen or what counts as a watch. So, I mean, again, I would just say take these things with a grain of salt. I know HBO released a statement about it and they were like, nah, we're good. But who knows? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, but I'm also like, I wouldn't be surprised if it's being way over exaggerated or just not true at all. Or they have no idea, because honestly, I tried to look into it and I just found so many different things. So who knows? I know it's kind of hard to avoid. If you're on social media, I just know it's hard to avoid. But I would suggest like a lot of that is blown up. A lot of that is like echo chamber. It exists. 1,000% it exists. And it's not small, but it's not as big as I think people are making it out to be. Like I said, the game is like sold on more than almost any game. Like it's... I wish it would go away. I'm trying to think of things I could do. I don't know. Need a whole different internet landscape, I guess. But I just take things with this knowledge in hand that they want you to think everyone hates it. And I'm here to tell you that is not true. And I am not alone. So yes. Anyway, I hope that kind of answers the question. I could have looked into it like more specifically. Maybe I will in the future, but I was just like, I don't want to deal with these. I don't want to. I just don't think it's. I know why it's gotten so much hate. They think it's woke, and they're mad about Joel, and they're really angry about the LGBTQ plus representation. So I guess I just wasn't surprised. We did talk about it a little bit, I think in the episode 7? No, episode 5, if you want to hear more about it. But that's kind of why I know it's a big deal, but that's kind of why we didn't really bring it up that much other than that episode. But yeah, I do recommend that documentary if you're curious. Grounded. You can find it on YouTube. Also, I think that kind of in closing, as I said, my dad had died not too long before this came out. And I think when I watch it and when I play it, it's so interesting to me because it does feel like I'm processing grief, and that's the power of good storytelling and kind of all the things, the phases that you go through and how devastating and destructive some of them can be. Even before, because our relationship had deteriorated so poorly, I started saying things to him that I meant to hurt. I meant to hurt him. And, you look back and you're like, wow, I wish I'd never said that one. But so when I maybe that's one of the reasons I'm so sympathetic to Ellie when she is being a brat. Like, I get it. You kind of lash out in these ways, especially if there's like a secret no one's talking about, or at least specifically in this case, which was what was going on. And then you're going to see on Abby's side what I think is actually a really great representation of healing from trauma. Again, it's so hard to talk about this without spoiling anything, but just that they have a good visual that they use that I think I can't wait to talk about. But this does bring us to a little bonus. It's a little bit of a downer as well. But it is Father's Day coming up. I often joke about how I have like these sad traditions around Father's Day. Anyone who's suffering, I know it's tough, and I make light of things. That's just how I deal with it. So I understand it. It's really difficult. But I find it really, I was thinking about this because when my dad died, my hyperfixation was on How to Train Your Dragon. I have no idea where that came from. We had no connection over this. I don't even know if he'd seen it. But it just happened. It became like my whole life for months. I read all the books. I watched all the shows, all the movies. People got me like How to Train Your Dragon gifts. I went as Hiccup to Dragon Con. Like, it was my whole life. And then it just one day went away, which is how a lot of hyperfixation works. But the live action movie is coming out, which, by the way, has Nico Parker, who is Joel's daughter, Sarah, and The Last of Us, connections. And people have been asking me, are you going to see it? And I'm like, I want to see it, but I'm so associated with my dad's death now, so I have to be in a good place. But it's really funny to me that I don't associate The Last of Us 2 with my dad's death, even though all the time I'm thinking about, like, I get why this game resonated with me so much when it came out. Mm-hmm. But that brings us to the sad fact. How to Train Your Dragon fandom is somehow tearing itself apart too. And it's mostly because basically they cast a Black woman. Oh, I mean, I don't know. That's my opinion. But they're saying like it's not historically accurate or whatever. And I just don't. Again, why?
Because dragons, obviously, historically
very
accurate. My
God.
God. And training them.
Yes. So it's just, I'm like, why can't you just stop it? Just stop it. If you don't like it, you don't like it. But you don't have to do this.
Some people's hobbies is to just hate. Like, it brings them joy to fight. It gives them some kind of adrenaline.
Yeah, I know. I will say that I have a friend like that, and I do avoid a lot of conversations about things like this with them. But I also I've had a couple of friends I've said when I told them that The Last of Us 2 is my favorite game, they're like, oh, I hate it for X, Y, and Z. And I was like, play it again. And they did. And then they were like, okay, you were right. Because it's so jarring the first time. It really, really is. Just because you have this anticipation of where the story is going to go, and then it doesn't go that way at all. And it's shocking. And so you kind of are like constantly, I remember when you first turned to Abby, I kept thinking, when are we going to turn back? When? And then they were like, nope. Like, no. But then I left it. Like, I grew but you have to kind of have that moment of like, okay, I have to accept this. And I did say when I did I think it was when the newest version came out of the game. And I was talking about empathy and how I found it really interesting that most of my women friends who have played it have come to a very empathetic place. And most of the men I see online who are mad never, ever even think about empathy. Or like, no way will I ever see this from another person's point of view, ever. But the point being that sometimes I have had some people in my life who were real mad about Last of Us 2. And then I just was like, nope, go play it. And now they've kind of backed off. So I hope that there are some people online like that, but I do think you're right that there's some people that are they just want to piss people off. They want to see those angry replies or people who agree with them. And I do think a lot of it is about wanting to get people agree that you are right. They should never have done this with The Last of Us 2. And in fact, the voice actor, Troy Baker, who played Joel, has done in interviews, he said he gets really frustrated because people come up to him and they're like, it was so wrong what they did to you. They never should have done that. And his go-to question is, then tell me a better story. What's the story you're going to tell? And he says they never have an answer. And even my mom, she kind of jokingly was like, how could they do that to Pedro Pascal? Basically, she was sort of saying, like, he needs a job. And I'm like, he's everywhere, Mom.
No, he purposely picked this because he knew he was going to die.
That's what I think.
He said that. He said, I read the script. I died. Great, I'm in.
Right. Because I think, and I know it's still sad.
Joke, but
he's still sad to have lost like a character that he cared about. But I think it's probably nice as an actor to be like, okay, I know when I'm out and I can do these different projects I can line up. And guess what? He's in a Marvel movie. He's got like 4 other movies out right now.
Right.
He's fine.
He's fine. He doesn't care. He knew what he was getting into. And he liked it.
He did. And I mean, if we're going to talk about like character differences, he definitely, like I said in one of I think episode 6, it was interesting to hear him, who's never played the game, talk about how he views Joel. And I was like, oh, I like this. It was definitely not how I view it. It's a much nicer take. But, okay, I've just rambled so long. It was supposed to be a question and answer, and then I just went on.
She did an outline, y'all. I didn't have any questions because she did an outline. And I was like, oh, she's prepared. I'm good. If I see an outline, she's got a thought process. I let it go.
I have so many thoughts. And I'm sure like this will be it for a while, but I'm sure I'll come back and have more thoughts, and we'll talk more about the toxic fandom part of it. But for now, I just want to say thank you to the listeners who have written in and have been supportive. And I love how many of you are like, I get this Joel thing, but Bella Ramsey's right there. Like, I love how many of you are being very supportive of these characters.
Yeah.
Who get so much online hate. So thank you. And I love hearing from you. And if you email me about it, I will send you a long email in response about my thoughts. So be prepared. Be prepared. But all right, that's it for now. If you would like to email us, you can email us at hello@stuffmomnevertoldyou.com. You can also find us on Blue Sky at Monster Podcast, or on Instagram and TikTok at Stuff Mom Never Told You. We're also on YouTube. We have a TeePublic store, and we have a book you can get wherever you get your books. Thanks as always to our super producer Christina, our executive producer Maya, and our contributor Joey.
Thank you.
And thanks to you for listening. Stuff I Never Told You is a production by iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, you can check out the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.